Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all of your sports books and track all of your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You can also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as they're the best account on the platform. Head to the App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire to download the app.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your Midday Market Report for Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. Our weekly trip across the border with good friend and colleague, Mr. Andrew McInnis from Wager Talk, from McGinnis Picks, talking some pucks, some CFL recap. Dark day in the NHL, but I got a bunch of games up on my spreadsheet for tomorrow. We'll get into that, maybe a few picks and props and for Thursday's Thanksgiving Day. But first, shout out to the gentleman behind the glass, Joseph Shea, Evan Lewis, Cade Horton, Olu, and Bennett, and of course our proud partnership and sponsor, WagerWire. If you haven't already, please go to Google Play or wherever you download the apps. Download it, it's free. Get yourself accustomed to starting to track your bets, your ROIs. Down below, take a look and see how many more apps that you can download in your state so you can start window shopping, saving some money there in the long-term investment game. And lastly, seeing that Christmas is just over a month away, join the affiliate program at WagerWire. Send an email to affiliates@wagerwire.com. Tell them JD from ECSI sent you. Travis, Zach, the rest of their team and community will take good care of you. Without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Andrew McInnis.
Hey, Jeff.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon. Look at that new spiffy background we have going. I got to love it.
I can't thank Evan Lewis. He's been a godsend for me, doing amazing work behind the glass. Big things coming for this kid. How are you?
Doing well. I was scratching my head, wondering what was going on today on the ice. I saw yesterday there were no games listed for today, as well as no games on Thursday. So when there are games, there's a lot, and when there's few games, well, there's actually no games. That's what we're seeing right now in the NHL. So it's real interesting, but today gives me time to get ready for tomorrow. So I'm happy for it.
Yeah, I was just going through as the intros are going through. Big slate tomorrow. I saw someone tweet on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it. The actual reason why is the availability of the arenas today. So dark day there. Big slate tomorrow. Gives the teams that were playing over the weekend a chance to get back across the pond there as well. What we've been doing, and I love it, is you come on here on Tuesday. I go on to your channel on Thursday. And on Thursday, we broke down the CFL, the Grey Cup Championship. And on the alert Sunday in our action parlay, we took Montreal plus the 8.5. We took them plus the 330 on the money line. Back-to-back years, Andrew. ECSI is holding the Grey Cup back-to-back years. The dog has come in. Give us your thoughts leading up to the game. I've really felt bad for you. You got screwed on the under in the first half. I'll take blame for some of that. It was a costly turnover, unfortunately, for you to get hooked there. But give us your thoughts on the final game of the CFL on Sunday.
Overall, Great game for the league. Great for Canada. The ratings were extremely high. I mean, we saw 3.5, 4 million sometimes for viewers in for some of these CFL games, for the Grey Cup games, and just one network. We're seeing apparently it was as high as like 8 million people tuned in at some point to watch that game, which was awesome. Montreal hadn't had a Grey Cup come home back to Quebec in quite some time, so for them not to just compete but to win outright is unbelievable. And one thing interesting now is, can we really call Winnipeg a dynasty, right? I mean, is it a dynasty if you just get to the dance, or and leave alone? Because that's what's happening to the Zach Collaros and the Blue Bombers right now. They're getting to the dance, but they're not really leaving with anybody or anything. And 4 trips, 4 straight years for Zach Collaros in the Grey Cup, only comes home with 2 Grey Cups. Obviously, that's still unbelievable, that 500 track record, but for them to find a way to lose that game is tough. I mean, giving Montreal the ability not once but twice to drive and march the field. And I got to give credit to Cody Fajardo. He's someone that on your show and my own show and multiple shows, and also all kinds of other CFL people, writers and experts that cover, did not have confidence in Fajardo to be able to carry the team to a victory. They thought that it would be just the defense, and that's kind of what I said to you. The defense was all they were, and I have to tip my cap and recognize when I was wrong about somebody, and he did a great job. So hats off to him and that Montreal Alouettes team. Hats off to you for that sprinkle on the money line. If I know you weren't going to, stay out on the sidelines for a little bit of a money line sprinkle. So, but I'm really, really excited. I think it's overall great for the league, and I'm happy. I got some messages from people actually that watched my shows where I did talk about the Alouettes 15-1 future though. So I didn't end up releasing that to clients because I honestly did think that, the hedging opportunities could be there, but I didn't want to release a future that I really didn't believe in whatsoever. And then, man, through Hamilton, through Toronto, and through Winnipeg, the Montreal Alouettes just grew as a team and got the job done. But it's great for the league, I think, Jeff. I mean, what was the story all year long? Toronto versus Winnipeg. And I have to ask you this. Did you get a chance to watch that interview that was floating around that went viral with the French player? Did you see that?
I did not.
So pretty much this player, and I don't really speak much French. I could hear a few words in conversation, but anybody that knows with Canada, like, people in Quebec are very passionate about their French heritage and their language, right? They are disappointed if you don't know French, right? If I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, if I go to Montreal and I walk into Tim Hortons to get a coffee, they're not going to be offended if I try and speak French to order and don't know how to do it. They're not going to laugh at me. They're actually going to smile and appreciate it. They want you to try and speak French. They want you to try and recognize where you are, right? So this guy was complaining because apparently all week a big story in the CFL was that there were no French signs. There was no French on the field. The spray paint, it all said Grey Cup. It didn't say Coupe Grey. Like, it didn't, you know what I mean? Like, there was no French language involved in the hype. And then he was talking about how if you go on TSN on like, how when you click guide on your TV, it tells you what's coming up next. For some people, their service provider was saying Grey Cup, Winnipeg versus Toronto, which is crazy. The fact that was even anyway. So he went on this huge rant, and it was really passionate. I'll have to send it to you because I had to get it translated, obviously, but he pretty much was saying, like, the fact that we're a huge story, nobody believed in us, nobody believed in the French team, and I don't think anybody really had anything against the French team, but I think it's a really cool story, and they really are a big underdog story, and I don't think people give them enough credit because look at March Madness, right? When you got a team that's ranked super low and they make it up high, they get all the attention. But because it's only a 9-man league, I don't think people realize how much of an upset it really was. But to put it in perspective, again, they were 15-1 at the start of the playoffs. That's quite a big, quite a huge swing there to go from 15-1 to winning the whole thing.
And I'm glad you said what you said because, I send out an alert every day, and we do 2, 3, sometimes 4 shows a day, and people are too busy. They don't have time. They just want the meat and the potatoes. Give out what you like, Jeff, and we'll take it from there. And it's bothersome for the fact that I do have a lot of people that watch the shows that pick up those tidbits and nuggets, and so going back to the MLB playoffs, where there's some of our clients, that had the Diamondbacks at 35-1, that had the Texas Rangers at 25-1, and they're sitting there sweat free, enjoying the World Series. And so you talk about once the brackets are set, and the pick'em game, pretty much for the Hamilton coin flip, short spread there, and then come, the Toronto Argonauts. Well, you got through Hamilton, you're not going to get through Toronto, and then if you do get through Toronto, there's no way in holy hell you're going to get and beat Winnipeg. And when you sent me the text and says, is the spread going to be double digits? My exact words to you, Vegas will tell you right away. If it's 9.5 or 10, they want the Montreal money. If it's 7, 7.5, they want the other side. They want the Winnipeg money. And sure enough, it was 7, 7.5. So right there, the alarm bells were set off. I was like, I know which way I'm going on Sunday. I already got my dog of the day. I'll take the 8, 8.5, sprinkle the beer and pizza money, as Kelly would say, on the plus 330. And listen, without that turnover, at halftime, it would have looked bleak. And it looked bleak in the fourth quarter. As you said, they got not one but 2 opportunities. And I think with 11 or 15 seconds left, they were able to seal the deal. But it was a hell of a way to end the year.
Well, and I want to kind of elaborate on that, or more so just follow up to ask you some questions about that, because I always say that, I enjoy our show together because I think that we can learn from each other's takes. And I always learn from you, especially about when you talk about the opening number. Do you think that when you reference that, is it different for each sport? Like when you look at it, like let's say in the NHL, for example, if there was a game and that you thought would be minus 120 and they get open minus 130, does that mean that you're going to be looking to get on them, or you're going to look for the other side? Or like when you said that about Montreal, would you have taken the dog still if the number didn't open like how it did? Or is it kind of just like you're playing it based on what you saw as the number and kind of what the market is telling you? Like we talked backstage about that Flames game last week, and I've learned about the opening numbers, like holy smokes, the Flames, who have not had a good season, are minus 140 favorites over the Canucks. And you ask yourself why, because it's the books are telling you something. But how often do the books tell you something like that and you realize, well, I don't agree with them. I think I want to go against them.
Well, that's a big. If you're taking your number and you're comparing it to, let's say, a Jeffrey Benson at the Circa, or a Pinnacle across the pond, and you're going to stick to your number because the professional bettors have their own numbers. And so when a Circa or a Pinnacle opens up a number incorrect, they're going to take their number versus the incorrect line. So when the Circa at say 2:00 on Sunday, when we're watching the NFL, allows their sharp bettors, here's our opening numbers, and they allow their sharp bettors to come in and bet 2,000 on those numbers, hang up and call again, or use the app, I should say, or go face to face. The fact of the matter is they're allowing their sharp bettors to say, okay, here's what our numbers say, but we want to see where the sharp play is before we release it to the public. Perfect example was last year in the AFC NFC championship games. We remember Philadelphia shutting out the Giants 31-38 We remember them knocking out the two quarterbacks for the 49ers and beating them 31-7. We saw a Kansas City team struggle, should have lost to the Bengals, and then they win in the last drive in the last second. So my point here is Jeffrey Benson stuck to their number and opened up the Chiefs minus 2 or 2.5. And their first 25 bets, 23 of them were on the Eagles, and most shops opened it up a pick 'em or Eagles -1, and of course the Bengals, the Chiefs go on to win the Super Bowl. So if I'll be 1,000% honest with you, if that opening number was Winnipeg -9.5,
Mhm.
I would have said to you, there's only one way that number can go, and that would have been down to the 7.5, 8, 8.5. So would I have been on Montreal? Probably not. But when I saw that opening number, because I trust and respect the opening number, was only 7, 7.5. There was only one way that number could go, and that was to 8, 8.5. And I'll take my shot on the dog there.
I think that's really important because I used to be confused about that, and I have no problem admitting it, where a lot of people, they think that the right side is always where the money has moved online, right? And I think it's an important lesson to learn that it's like there's a difference, and you've taught me about the opening number, but I've noticed that a lot with hockey, where it's not as much. I know it's a money line sport versus, against the spread and things like that. But as you just mentioned there, it's not as much about what the book is opening it as where the money is coming into, and then they kind of just follow suit after that. And that's kind of what the CFL has been all year long, right? You look at the summer. I mean, what you just did this past weekend for the Grey Cup is pretty much, doesn't that describe the CFL as a whole this year? The money, it's almost like the money that came in to move lines and the way the numbers moved. It's like they opened up soft numbers, but the way that they got moved ended up being really just exaggerated. And then you just take the other side. It happened all summer long. So you see it open up. Yeah, exactly.
How many times
up at 7 and it moves to what? What was the highest it got to? 9.5 or not 9.5, maybe
8.5.
Yeah,
8.5. And how many weeks did we talk about Edmonton and the fact that money kept coming in supposedly on Edmonton every week, and they had lost 18, 19, 20 something in a row at home, and the fact that every week people are betting on Edmonton. That's what the numbers wanted to show us. And I'd like to say this a lot is people don't have time like we do to study the numbers. Okay, so they work 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 4, and they come in and they see a line that opened at 4 that went to 3.5 to 3. Then it's at 2.5. They're like, well, we got to go follow the money. And meanwhile, that number, you're not trusting and respecting what the true number is. And it was 4. And it went through a key number of 3 and down to 2.5. The true value is on the team that opened at 4 and now is only 2.5. But we want to follow the money. Well, they got to be on the right side. Look at that line, drop, drop, drop. And the realization is there's only a handful of books that create and open and use their own numbers. 95% of the books out there just copy and paste Pinnacles. Here's the opening number. We're going to copy and paste that. And we're going to move accordingly to everyone else. Where it used to be, I'll use Michigan, Ohio State this week. We'll just say the number's 4.5. Well, if I got 10 million on Michigan minus 4.5, and I got 10 million on Ohio State plus 4.5, at the end of the day, they don't care who wins and loses the game. They made $1 million in juice. That's what that's all about.
So would you say, like, overall, I know I don't want to ask you a blanket question, but you don't respect line movement? You just respect the way it first initially comes out?
January 1st, 2015, we debuted ECSI and we went public on social media. There were certain, and I'm not going to call these guys out. I will not call the companies out. There were certain companies where line movement really was true line movement. I go back to 2017, Andrew, where we went 30-2 from the conference championships in college basketball through March Madness. 30-2, the most epic run I'll ever have in my life. That's when a line, Duke and Kentucky, I'll tell you the game exactly. Duke and Kentucky, Duke opened up at 4. 80% of the bets, 85% of the money was on Duke, yet the line went to 2.5. I could tell you straight to your eyes right now, not only was Kentucky going to cover that game, they were probably going to win the game outright, and they did. That's when there's certain companies where their data was legit. Now everyone's doing it, and so they can shade their numbers any which way they want you to look at it. If you're on an Odd Sharks, if you're on a pregame.com, if you're on a DraftKings, a VSiN, a Wager Talk, whatever, there's a lot of these companies now that put the bet splits, that put the monies, and it's showing reverse line movement, or it's showing why the numbers moving in the right direction, but it's fugazi. It's not working. And there was a company that I was grandfathered in that got a lot bigger, that moved to another avenue, that company's still in business, but I have long since left the building with them because their numbers aren't true and accurate anymore.
It's really interesting. I hope you don't mind the questions I have here on
No.
your show, but I really am interested by that. And I've learned a lot about that, especially this year in the NHL. I find that there's a lot more underdog love this year in the NHL than there's ever been. And because of that, you're actually losing value on some of these teams that I think present more, like, for example, the Columbus Blue Jackets, right? The Arizona Coyotes, the St. Louis Blues. They're teams that I think that deserve some respect, but based on what I've seen with some of these numbers I'm getting with them, I don't like the numbers enough to pull the trigger on it. And I think it's, you're looking at some of this movement and they're trying to get you in. It's almost like the books are protecting themselves because they know that people love to bet dogs. They love to bet the popular dog, love to bet these teams that are getting going. And you see it with popular teams all the time. Like if the Toronto Maple Leafs were on the run right now that the LA Kings are on, they would be 20 cents, 30 cents higher every single night than I think the Kings are. Would you say that's fair? I mean, sure, the LA Kings are a hockey market, we can say. I mean, but let's face it, which markets do you think dominated in Los Angeles? I'd say that there's 4 major sports teams I could say ahead of the Kings. You've got LAFC, LA Galaxy. Let's not forget about the LA Lakers. You've got the Los Angeles Dodgers. You've got, the Angels. I mean, this is an LA Kings team that's dominating, and yet the price for them compared to some of the other popular teams, like even the Bruins and the Maple Leafs and even the Oilers, who aren't doing well, but because they're a popular team, they still get handed these prices. So I think that as far as our discussion about opening prices and opening numbers are concerned, we can also talk about certain teams getting more love than they might deserve. Would you agree with me on that there? I think some teams that kind of slide under the radar, and I've become a lot more aware of these analytical numbers in hockey, and I'm not always betting on teams because of that. But what I'm trying to do is realize which teams are actually performing well and they can't put the puck in the net, even though their numbers suggest they could be, but also which teams are performing well and not getting the love in the market they deserve. And that's what's helped me with kind of like my stay away games more than anything, because as we know, sometimes not playing a game is just as much of a win as playing a game and losing, right? And when I look at some teams like the ones I've mentioned, the Blues and the Coyotes and the Blue Jackets, they've been putting up fights against teams lately. And those are teams that I actually don't want to be betting against right now, despite some of their runs that they've gone. Then the Columbus Blue Jackets are like 0-9-1 over their last 10, something like that. But they're a team I think is ready to break out soon. I'm waiting for them to get that first really good performance, Jeff, and then I'm going to hop all over them because I don't think they're going to be respected in the marketplace.
I have so many ways to go off of that. And when you're focusing on hockey, I'll bring up the name Ralph Michaels. He's the data king. He'll bring back a bazillion different reasons, home and road splits, teams coming off long road trips. The list is endless. And so you're just going teams on back-to-backs, teams, how they perform in division versus out of division, how they do out. There's a million ways to skin the cat. And I haven't even yet talked about then the opening number, or the teams, again, off of that long road trip. You're supposed to fade them when they come back home. And then you look at the numbers on teams that we expected to do well this year. The Edmonton Oilers, who don't have a goalie. They're but yet they're favored in every game. They're minus 180 at home. They're 120 favorites on the road. The Boston Bruins last year that set an NHL record for most points in a regular season. And what they do, they bowed out in the first round of the playoffs. What are they doing this year? They're like 11-1-2. They're doing the same damn thing. And they lost last night in overtime. They gave up a late goal with 5 seconds left and lose in overtime. So then you come to Jeff Dawson and ECSI that says, well, trust and respect the opening number, but I'm not going to lay the juice. I'm not going to play a game in regulation. I'm not going to depend on an empty net goal. So give me the plus money on them to get to 4 or better. So there's just it's a popsicle headache, Andrew. That's what it is.
And, looking at some of these numbers, you can kind of realize that with some teams, that's the way to go, even if they're underdogs or even if they're not performing well, because some teams and you talked about how the Bruins last night are a good example, not winning the game, but what do? Hit the team total at the plus price. So how good would you feel if you had that team total, you had the plus price, you discussed it, you're sitting there on your couch, you talk about people that were watching the World Series smiling with those 2 future bets. If you're somebody last night watching that game, you see your team get to 4, you're already smiling ear to ear. You don't have to worry. And that's kind of how I feel when people ask me, why do you like taking team total overs with underdogs, but you don't really take the money line often on those underdogs? And I've looked at the numbers. I've looked at the history for myself doing that, Jeff. And you don't know how many times I've talked about it on a show or written about it or released a play to my clients where I've taken a below average team, and I'll take the Canadians as an example, over 2.5 goals, minus 120. They lose that game 5-3, 6-3, whatever it might be. And if they do win the game, what we can do is say, sprinkle on that money line, put a quarter of a unit on that. But I'm more confident that this team's going to score goals, but also give up a ton of goals as well. And that's what's hilarious is that there's some teams that rank in the top 10, top 15 in the league in goals for, but also rank top 10, top 15 in goals for and goals against percentage. So you don't really want to be betting on some of these dogs to win outright, because even when they have a good game offensively, their defense lets them down too. So it's always nice when you don't have to worry about what the other team is doing when you're betting team totals. You're just betting one team.
Yeah, and we talked at length last year a lot about that. And it's, the thought process very simply is, whenever you saw a 5.5, you bet the over, and the thought process is obviously 3-3. I'm a winner there. The same with the 6.5, a 3-3, you're a winner there. And how many times, does it end 4-2? How many times is it 3-2 and you didn't get the empty netter on the 5.5s? So what we've tried to do here in the last year, especially, is to take the minus money out of play, try to turn a favorite into plus money where we're getting some value. And again, it's not perfect. I'm sitting here, I got a text during our show here, and I'm a little peed off. I don't like to run to the window when there's day action. And this afternoon we did, Gonzaga and played Syracuse today, and they're both teams coming off of playing the day before. So it's a back-to-back. The Zags lost last night, and they were 12.5-point favorites against Syracuse. Did I think they were going to win? Yeah. Did I think they were going to cover? I did, but I thought I'd get cute and go over 83 on the team total. So at halftime, I'm like, just get me to 40, 41, 42, 43. I'm stuck on 39, and you need that one push. Well, I didn't get the push from Syracuse. And there's that last 2 to 3 minutes, there wasn't stop and foul. And they land on 76. So we start the day 0-1. And They covered though. They won by 19. So again, I'm beating myself up. Why didn't you just give the side, dumbass? And
I've been
instead,
there. I've been
I
there.
took the team total. So this conversation that we just had is the same in college football. It's the same in the NFL. It's the same in baseball. You talk about it a lot of times last year, and you talked about it this year. How I send out the alerts, and we got baseball games where we need teams to score touchdowns. We need teams to get the extra point or 2-point conversion. And at the end of the day, there it was 9-3. And not having to worry about the other side is a big, big key to that as well.
Do you know any websites where you can find information on like teams? I guess you probably can find like fouls per game. Do you know where we can? I'm sure there's a lot of different stats for that, websites for that, right? Like, because Drew Martin from Wager Talk and does all kinds of other stuff. He loves totals in college basketball, as you do with the team totals and the totals. He says that like sometimes you can look at the last 3 minutes, right? And whatever you want to call it, garbage time, foul fest, free throws, whatever you want, word fun expression you want to use. Sometimes that's what gets you over the total. I understand this scenario was a different example. Obviously, Syracuse, Gonzaga, the bigger point spread. But even then, when you look at a point spread like this and a game like this, I wonder, like certain teams, if you could look at, and this is just me kind of coming off the top of my head here, how many points per game that they're involved in that come off free throws. Because that plays a huge factor when you're looking at a total, and it looks to me when I'm looking at this game right now that there weren't that many fouls in this Gonzaga game than there usually would be.
Yeah, and again, I'll tip my hand. I sent you the alert earlier today. I like Tennessee tonight, and I think a lot of people like them as well against Purdue. The opening number, the true number was 3.5 or 4. It's down to about 2.5 or 3. They're expecting a tight game, and a Purdue team that hasn't lost a lot of games in the last year and a half, highly ranked against a very athletic, a very good Tennessee team, which some people will say doesn't shoot the ball well, but they can take it to the rim. Now, do you take the 3.5? Do you sprinkle a little beer and pizza money on the money line? Or do you try to get cute and say, well, I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think either side's going to blow them out, but I do lean Tennessee. So why not take the team total over on the Tennessee side? Because either which way, you should, in that final 4 minutes, as long as you're not down by 20, or in this case, 17 or 15 in the Syracuse Gonzaga game, you're going to get start and stops where you're going to score a basket and you're going to foul. You're going to put the other team on the line, which means in that last 4 minutes, you might get an extra 5, 6, 7, 8 possessions because you're just fouling the team as soon as they get the ball in. So opening numbers there or close games we expect to be close. A funny story yesterday, I left the Kentucky team total on the bench. I left them on my desk. And I was doing cartwheels. They were supposed to blow out the St. Joseph's team, and I'm laughing all the way to the bank. Good call, Jeff. Way not to send that one out. It's a loser. The game went to overtime.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And Kentucky gets their number. They scored, I think, about 90. The game had, if it doesn't go to overtime, they would have been 12, 13 points under. But since it went to overtime, they get there. So you win some and you lose some.
Well, and that's the thing is sometimes I think it's a good point you raised, though. I talked about how the team totals have to do with just one team, but something you said there about the early game today really said something to me there is the fact that sometimes you do still need some effort from the other team to keep the pace going for your other team in a sport like basketball, especially, right? Like in football, you can see it. Obviously a coach will say, we're going to run some run plays. We're going to, screen pass. We're going to kind of, get some new guys in the mix here. But in basketball, you can really see a coach. I remember when I played basketball at, when I was really young, if you were in a blowout, it was almost like, unless you were playing like AAU or like D1, like summer league, like the coach would have that 5-pass rule. You know what I mean? Like, and this is obviously, when I'm super young, but it's like out of respect, right? I want you to pass the ball around a couple times, run a few plays. But you almost will see that sometimes when the new subs come into the game in college basketball, I find, where it's almost like those new subs aren't coming into the game for isolation ball. They're coming in so the coach can see what they're like running their offense in a real game situation. And sometimes you see them getting checked into the game and you're like, man, this guy is running the offense almost too good. Like, don't be afraid to go off the script. You know what I mean? But what you just said there, all of that conversation, it reminded me of attempts versus yards, attempts versus completions, receptions versus yards. That argument that I have with myself as a prop bettor. And this weekend, one that I really like, Jeff, in the NFL, or this Thursday, Jordan Love over 19.5 completions versus his attempts. And sometimes the attempts one sticks out to me right away. There's all kinds of different reasons I could be looking at it. Whether do I think it's going to be a blowout? Do I think this guy's going to have to throw the ball a lot, but maybe he won't be completing them? Maybe the defense is going to be tough, but if they're down 14, he's going to have no choice but to keep throwing it. But this one to me is all about the number. I mean, you've seen Jordan Love get 22, 23, some of these a little bit higher numbers in some matchups he's been involved in. But now you're seeing 19.5 due to that dangerous pass rush Detroit has. Their secondary has been, better than people give them credit for. To me, it's just a value play at a guy that's gone over this, I think, in 5 of the last 7 games. And I think that with the broadened, the amount of weapons that he has in this team might not be superstars, but at this point, it could be Musgrave, it could be Reed, it could be Watson, it could be Dobbs, whoever it is. It's a lot of quick passes, even with their running back situation now being so injured. Do you really think the Packers are going to run the ball a lot? I'm really intrigued. So I didn't mean to switch to football on you, without you just making the switch, but that's one that I really look at, because I think that if you look at team totals, like how you just talked about, the team total versus the spread, taking one thing versus the other, completions versus attempts has been one thing that I've really looked at. And somebody like Zach Wilson is somebody I want to bet attempts on, because I'm sorry. I mean, look, I don't know how many he's going to complete, but if it comes to a certain point where if their offense is, struggling and if they find themselves down, he's going to have to throw the ball.
No, and you brought up a great point there about the Packers game on Thursday. Short week. They've already got beat up pretty good when they played them at Lambeau Field. No Aaron Jones. So now A.J. Dillon goes to the one spot. I'll have to do some homework to see who's the number 2 back. Is there a pass catching back there? And as you were naming all those wide receivers, you forgot to even add the emergence of Wicks. Wicks has now come on. Jaden Reed has had a great year. I will say I am very salty on Christian Watson. I will never draft that. Again, I have him in one spot. He's been on the bench the last few weeks. Of course, he got his token touchdown this past week, but Romeo Doubs as well. In the dome, in a controlled setting, in a game where, again, Detroit might get out early, so he could be forced to play, forced to throw the ball more. I'd even be interested, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, to take a look at maybe his rushing yards, because he could be passing a lot, and Aiden Hutchinson could be putting a lot of pressure on him, so he could pull the ball down and also rush the ball a lot as well.
I like that quite a bit, and I feel like he's been getting up to that a lot more recently, because of the struggle with the running room right now, whether it's been injuries or whether it's just been them not being able to produce. But there's something I've noticed about Jordan Love and some quarterbacks, and I think it has to do with his age. A handicap I used to look at every week on my prop show was this quarterback's facing a team with a top 10 pass rush. It means they're going to have to escape the pocket and move. And what's happened is it's been quite the opposite. It's been when they face a good pass rush, don't overthink it. They're throwing the ball away or they're taking the sack. So I think I might have taken his over in rushing yards the last time they played Detroit. And maybe that's why I'm still salty about it. But he's been one of those ones. And you know who's been someone like that, Jeff, has been Derrick Henry recently. When he plays a team with a bottom 5 rush defense, he has an awesome, awesome day. When he plays a team with a top 10 rush defense, he struggles big time right now. And obviously it has to do with how Tennessee is playing. But sometimes you look at these numbers and you try not to overthink it. And right now with Jordan Love, if I see him playing a respectable pass rush, I'm a little bit weary to look towards his rushing yards.
We blink and we're already 40 something minutes in, and it's comical. And I know that you're an hour behind me, so it's already 5:40. I cannot get the bride or Henry upset here and have you miss dinner. But any other Thanksgiving Day props or leans that you might have for everyone watching and listening?
Pulling things up here, when you talk about the entire slate itself and you talk about the Dallas game, I talk about keeping it simple. Dak Prescott, for some reason, one or the other, has been someone that's been a joke for me on my prop shows. And I'm not saying the guy is a person. I'm saying his prop bets, because he's somebody that when he plays weaker teams, he sticks out. Whatever that number is, whatever number they give him, he has a phenomenal day. When he plays a team that has a respectable defense or the point spread isn't huge, he's not as big, and they look towards the run game a lot more. His number right now is 23.5 for his pass completions. Washington, their defense is ranking really low over the past 3 to 4 weeks, and he's gone over 23.5 completions in 7 of his last 10 games. So that's kind of something I'm looking at. As far as Sam Howell, I think I would look towards his yards. He's coming off his first bad performance. Last week did not look that promising, but I think that in this game in particular, no matter how many opportunities he has to get the ball, I think they're going to have to throw deep. I think Dallas has actually been dragging teams into over games more than people think. So when I look towards this team in general, when I look towards the receivers, when I'm looking towards some of their guys, I'm looking towards yards, not receptions, as I always talk about. What do you want to look at? Do you want to look towards this guy and his receptions for just how many times he gets the ball and not worry about it? But when I look towards this offense for Washington, how many opportunities are they going to have, right? This is not a quarterback I want to be looking at for his completions this week. It's more so about the yards. When they do make a big play, how big is it going to be? I like Seattle, actually. That's kind of a point spread range that I'm comfortable in. I think that this is a point spread range that I've liked betting on Seattle. And, looking at the week that they're coming off of, I like when they get hate. I like when people kind of question them a little bit. And despite some up and down performances the last few weeks, I think that they're actually a better overall team. They're putting a lot of pressure on their run game and saying that it wasn't utilized enough. They've dealt with some stuff as far as that's concerned. But I think that this is the point spread range where I want to go against San Fran. And as you know, Jeff, out of the bye week last week, it was very difficult to make money betting against San Francisco, especially off their bye week. But I think Seattle's a play that I'm going to have for them despite the short week. It's also a short week for San Fran. And prop bets in that game, let me pull things up here. There was one trend that I found earlier. I got to look at it on my sheet. Receptions. This was okay. George Kittle, over his last handful of games, his yards, 89, 116, 149. He's only averaging 4.3 receptions per game. So when you look at these numbers here, he's not somebody that's being used as a safety blanket. He's not someone that's being used as kind of a security throw. He's a part of the offense when they need somebody to make a big play. I've talked about a guy like Calvin Ridley. This might sound crazy to say, Jeff. He's gone over his longest reception several weeks in a row, and yet under his receiving yard number. Isn't that ridiculous? And so this is the case with a guy like George Kittle, sometimes going under his receptions number, but over on his receiving yards. So different things I'm looking at. Obviously, he's dealt with health issues as well, but I want to know your thoughts on that Seattle play.
No, I agree. I had just finished up the NFL bet exchange, and I grabbed Seattle plus the 7. I like the spot. I like the short week coming off the tough loss to the Rams. The 49ers are rounding into form. Obviously, after the bye, they go to Jacksonville, they take care of business. The Buccaneers played them pretty well. And the fact that Baker Mayfield not once but twice had the ball late in that game for the backdoor cover and couldn't get it done there. Brock Purdy coming off his best game of the year by far. Do I expect the 49ers to win? Yeah, I think they'll find a way to win. But I also think that the Seahawks will find a way to cover in a tough, your 24-20 type game. I think Kenneth Walker is out for the Seahawks. I might want to go dabble. I think DJ Dallas as a pass catching back because they're going to use Charbonnet as the lead back there. So maybe go to look for a pass catching back that might be sneaky there. Njigba has come on very well for this team. DK Metcalf, excuse me, on one side. Lockett a little banged up there. So I think it's a sneaky game. It'll probably be the best game of the 3.
Yeah, I have to, before I forget, wish you and all your followers a happy Thanksgiving. It always catches me off guard as a Canadian, as we've had our Thanksgiving a month ago already, but I have to thank you guys because at home, it's just another day for me, but a lot more sports on. So I'm happy about it. And I'm looking forward to it. And I think that in some of these games as well, you look at it, these home teams, their success on Thanksgiving. I usually think that, especially in hockey, I look towards road teams following Christmas breaks and things like that. It seems to me like the home teams have actually had more success in these situations. I'm not sure what it might be, Jeff, but maybe there's just less stress. Sometimes you think that going away would be a good thing to get away from the distractions and things. But when you're staying at home, I guess you still get to have that home life. Plus you get to go to the game. But I think I'll be looking towards home teams quite a bit on Thursday.
Yeah, and they're kind of leaning that way. I mean, you got Detroit now around 7, the Dallas around 11, and I was talking earlier, unaware of this. I think Dallas is averaging 40 points at home their last 3 or 4 starts. It's a get well game for them supposedly, but you got an embarrassing loss with Washington against the Giants, and a Sam Howell quarterback that was before last week leading the NFL in passing yards. Mm-hmm. He's got some great wide receivers with Terry McLaurin, with Jahan Dotson, Logan Thomas at tight end, good running backs with Gibson and Robinson. But they did trade away their defense with Sweat and Chase Young. So it's one of these that could be a high-scoring affair and a fun one to watch, especially.
I just got to say, I picked the wrong game to take Sam Howell passing yards over last week. That was frustrating. And that's what happens with me when I follow props so often that you're talking about one, you're eyeing it, and then you go, okay, this is the week I'm jumping in. And of course, Sam Howell goes under. But the problem is when you wait so long, the number changes, right? Looking at things, a couple things to look at as far as this Cowboys team is concerned, though. If you like Washington, I know you're a team total guy. 4-1 their last 5 games, averaging 33.6 points per game. So, if you don't want to jump in on point spreads, if you don't want to jump in on full games, I think the team total is a good look for the Cowboys.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the true number. Do they get cute? In college football, especially, if they give you that 32 and a half, even 33 number, that's usually a go number for us. In the NFL, you don't see a lot of those. And it's a game that, Dallas, before last week, Tony Pollard hadn't scored since week 1. He found the end zone late. It might be one of those games where, CeeDee Lamb has just had an amazing month. He's been hitting the tight ends. 2 weeks ago, it was the Brandon Cook show as well. Maybe it's a game where they really try to feed Tony Pollard. You don't want to get injured. It is a divisional game, though, so anything can happen in a divisional game. But it's a game that you fully expect. Oh, the Dallas field goal kicker hasn't missed a field goal all year. You expect them to be in that 34, 35, 37 range. But we were talking game flow about 15, 20 minutes ago in college basketball. Here, you're going to need some kind of game flow. You're going to need Washington at some point to put some points up before the next thing you know, there's the I'm drawing a brain fart here on the Rico Dowdell, or you find in the second and third string backs because it's
Yes.
31-3 and it's the start of the fourth and they just want to get on so they can cut the turkey.
And they're a team that does not show mercy, though. That's the thing. And then they will keep their foot on the gas pedal. As I said, there's some teams across all sports that I have circled, coaching staff, players, whoever it is, that do not show mercy. Other teams will, right? They'll run the ball. They'll call up certain plays. And that's kind of those are the teams you debate. Do I take the first half? Do I take the full game? Does this team need the full game to get me that point spread cover, or do they need just the first half to get a huge blowout? And when you're talking about a team like the Cowboys, I would give them the full 4 quarters to do what they need to do because they seem like they love taking advantage. I've heard people calling the Eagles frauds all game. Look at the Dallas Cowboys schedule they've had. I mean, look at the games that they've looked their best and they've really taken advantage. You want to talk about, fraud statistics or flawed statistics? Look at the points that they've scored against bad teams compared to the points they've scored in competitive games. It's been way different. So I'm curious what happens when they start to play some really good teams. I mean, there's a reason why here in Canada we call the Cowboys the Maple Leafs of the NFL. I mean, what's going to happen come playoff time? Because nobody cares what you're doing right now in November. And I'm not sure your take on the Cowboys, but as you can see from me, I just want to see what they can do finally when it comes down to the big games.
Well, people are talking in the NFC. Obviously, the Eagles, thanks to MVS's drop late last night, and then of course the Kels fumble inside the red zone. The Eagles 9-1. The Lions 8-2, and we were talking about the 49ers. The redheaded stepchild is right now Dallas, who's that team right in that 4th spot. It's a team with a great defense. It's a team with one of the elite wide receivers in the game. It's a team with supposedly one of the better backs in the game with Tony Pollard. It's a quarterback that's putting up great stats, but has not been able to win in the playoffs. It's been decades since the star was born and the Cowboys won a championship. And they're just put it this way, and I think this is a great comparison. Right now, they're the Montreal Alouettes of the NFC and the NFL right now. You can get an amazing price because people will take the Eagles, they'll take the 49ers, or they'll take the Lions before they put their hard-earned money on the Dallas Cowboys.
That's a good point. And the number that they have, would you say it makes sense? Because based on how they've played, I mean, they've only gotten blown out once this season so far, right? And that was against who else but the Niners. So as much as I make my jokes, they're an impressive team. And if CeeDee Lamb can continue to do what he's doing, I have no problem with that wager. I'll be going to you for some future bets. You're the futures king as far as I'm concerned.
Before we wrap this show up, you had a couple interesting articles and tweets today, and I want all the watchers and listeners here to be able to, if they haven't seen them, to go and watch them, and read them and talk about them. But I want you to give a little brief intro on what you saw and what you were writing about.
So I've talked a lot about 2 websites, moneypuck.com and naturalstattrick.com. are 2 of my favorite analytical websites to look at in the NHL. And again, there's different ways you can go to look at these stats and try and find ways to make profit when you're betting on these teams or betting against them. The difference between, I think, the NHL versus, like, let's say Shot Quality is a website that's used for NBA and college hoops. But the difference between that and hockey is that if you look at a shot quality website and you're going through their numbers and you see, okay, this player for Tennessee, well, he shot this percentage from the field, but based on his season averages, next game, he probably would have made this many shots. But it's different in hockey. You've got a hot goaltender, you've got a team playing, right? Some of these numbers will indicate to you on a whole, based on all averages and all metrics that this website looks at, which teams are leading in a certain category. And today I ran the numbers since November 1st, from November 1st to November 20th, which teams are at a top in expected goals against and expected goals for. These might either shock you or you might say, Jeff, that makes sense. So this is from number 1, from expected goals against the Leafs. Number 1, St. Louis Blues. Number 2, Arizona Coyotes. Number 3, Columbus Blue Jackets. Number 4, San Jose Sharks. You got the New York Islanders, Montreal Canadiens, Vancouver Canucks, Tampa Bay Lightning, Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Anaheim Ducks. So from the most to the 10th most, those are the expected goals allowed in the month of November. So when you look at certain teams like, the San Jose Sharks, the Montreal Canadiens, the Columbus Blue Jackets, that makes sense, right? You see that and you're like, okay, I get that. They haven't been doing well this month. But when you look at a team like the Maple Leafs, when you look at a team like the Vancouver Canucks, the Tampa Bay Lightning, does that say something to you when you look at, well, they've been winning, but yet this month they're in the bottom 10 as far as expected goals allowed? Are they a team I want my money on moving forward? So what are your thoughts on that list? Then I'll read the goals for to you. But doesn't that look interesting to you? Like some teams like the Habs and the Sharks, I get it. They're giving up a lot of shots and a lot of goals against. But when you see a team like the Canucks, Jeff, and you read that, does that kind of look to you like maybe they're going to be due for some regression if their expected goals against numbers, or it just lets you know this is a hot goaltender right now that they have?
Well, so from the top to the 10, those are, so I understand this correctly, these are the teams that are expected to allow the most goals, correct? So in the top 10, there was not one mention of Edmonton Oilers.
No, not one mention.
That was a shocker right there. When you talk about Vancouver, what I would say is, and the Lightning at this point, no Vasilevsky, a team that's resilient. We're on the ice. We might allow 3 or 4 goals, but we're going to score 5 or 6. So, I'm not an overs guy. I'm a more team total guy. But when you look at that, what intrigues me the most is take the top 10 there and take the teams that are winning, and that might even point you more towards an overplay. Hey, the Canucks, listen, I learned the hard way early this year. I'm not going against this Canucks team, meaning if I see something I like, I'm going to take their team total over, or I might even now start going to an over itself.
That's a really good point. Looking at some of these teams that are performing well and winning games, but also, holy crap, these numbers say they should be giving up a lot more goals as well. And as you know, in the NHL, a lot of times these numbers catch up to teams. So I find it super interesting. I'm not basing my entire handicap off these numbers, and I love that. The first thing you mentioned was the Oilers, right? Anybody that looks at this list, I think that's the main thing that should stick off the page, because again, for people out there listening, this isn't a list of, since November started, who's given up the most goals. It's who's supposed to have given up the most goals. So the Oilers aren't even in the top 10 or the bottom 10, we should say, which is crazy. That just goes to show no matter who their goaltender it's been, they sent down Jack Campbell, and even Skinner hadn't done well for them, right? But okay, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. Here's the top 10 expected goals for. You've got the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Edmonton Oilers, Columbus Blue Jackets. So that's kind of a big circle for me on this Blue Jackets team. They're top 10 in both categories. They're number 3 in expected goals for, but they're just not producing, which can be frustrating. Canucks, Florida Panthers, St. Louis Blues, Vegas Golden Knights, Calgary Flames, New Jersey Devils, and number 10, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, I mean, looking at teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets, the St. Louis Blues, the Calgary Flames, when I talked earlier about looking at team total overs for underdogs, those are the teams I'm talking about, because the Columbus Blue Jackets are giving up a ton of goals per game. But according to this number and this, ranking list, it says that their goals should start coming in. They're getting the chances. They should start scoring. But who wants to bet on this team right now with how many goals they're allowing each game as well? What does this list mean to you?
Well, the two teams that stuck out to me again that were on both lists, and one in particular is the St. Louis Blues. Is a team where a couple of years ago had the magical run, beat the Bruins in 7 games to win the Stanley Cup. A team that we've gone against a few times on our team totals for the opposing team and have cashed, that are allowing a lot of goals. But the thought process is that their offense is supposed to pick it up as well. And that Vancouver Canucks team, again, maybe it was a blessing to get stung by them 2 or 3, 4 times early, because I'm even or up now on them. They're resilient. And yeah, we'll give up a couple early. The other day they were down 2-0, and then in the second period they're up 4-2. So I like to hear stuff like this. The Blues sticks out to me, and the Canucks sticks out to me. And the funny part about it is, in both of those that you brought up, no mention of the Bruins, no mention of the Hurricanes. 2 teams that, again, the Bruins, I'm late to the party like last year. I was late. I did like their team total over last night. They do get there. I wasn't on it. I left that on the desk. A Carolina Hurricanes team like the Edmonton Oilers that have been on the desk for a while, because I kept going back. The stove's hot. The stove's hot. Well, they're not going to burn me this time. They did. So they're sitting out in the penalty box to a further day.
And, I've always looked at these numbers and said, this team is due for regression. This team's due for regression. This team's due for regression. But what I've learned to do, Jeff, is if you're already winning and you're still in the top of this ranking list, that's something I want to look for. When you look towards a team that's like Columbus, I keep looking at them because they're the one that kind of, probably would surprise everybody the most, right? I had people tweet at me and say, can you run this again? I think you're probably wrong for Columbus being on this list. They're a team that, like I talked about in basketball, if you give a shooter so many open shots every couple games, they're going to figure out their rhythm. But as of right now, Columbus just can't seem to score. So I think what happens is in the NHL is you need to see them score like 5 goals in one game and get a couple guys going. Then you start betting on them. But as for right now, this might show us that Columbus expected goals are top 3, but their actual goals are like bottom 5. And that says a lot about the quality of players over there right now, just not getting the job done. Patrick Laine was a healthy scratch on the weekend for them. He said it was the most embarrassing moment of his career. And this is coming from a guy that scored on his own net a couple years ago. So that's not good for the Blue Jackets.
I'd say we could talk for hours upon hours. I think we broke a record for us here. We're at the 105 mark. Please tell your bride and Henry I apologize here. But as we always close, the scroll has been going the whole time. At McInnis Picks, at Wager Talking Sports Mayflower. Jump on over to YouTube, of course, for Mayflower Sports. But always tell the listeners here what you have to offer at Wager Talk.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and safe travels if you're traveling home to see some family and friends. Right now, we actually do have a Thanksgiving deal going. It's $10 a day, so people talk a lot about this time of year. People are rushing around; they're busy. If you don't have time to go over to Wager Talk and click on the play and purchase one of my packages, then this package is for you, because you're going to get it sent right to your email, right to your phone right away. If you buy the package, one play currently is $25 at Wager Talk. You're going to get this for $70 for a full week, all sports of every play I release. So we got NFL, we got some low volume hoops plays. We got all kinds of stuff going on. So you'll make this back in, 2 or 3 days. And so you're going to get 7 days for $70, $10 a day. So that's about it for me. And I apologize for a little bit of the rant there with the numbers, but I really like that ranking list, and I find it pretty interesting.
No, there's never a rant. Trust me. I enjoy numbers. You know that. So something like that. Make sure you hold on to that, because probably on our next show, we can go back to that and start digging in. And then I'll probably ask you periodically to check back in, maybe the first of every month, and we can get a feel for, as you would say, who's might be getting hot at the right time and maybe who to fade at the right time.
Absolutely. That's a good idea. Once a month, or just taking a look at things and seeing if a team's heating up.
From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, from the one and only Andrew McInnis at McInnis Picks and Wager Talk, we wish everyone a blessed day and evening as we get a step closer to Thanksgiving on Thursday. If you're bored tonight, 8 to 10, myself and Anthony Pepe, Sports Map Radio. I'll be live at the Pepe compound. And this young gentleman here will be one of our guests at 8:30 p.m. We'll be talking some more NHL, and we'll pick his brain for some props or picks on Turkey Day. So everyone, if you have not downloaded that app, please go over to Sports Map Radio, follow us on the stream, or download the app. Check us out from 8 to 10, the Diehards, with myself and Anthony Pepe. Till then, enjoy dinner, guys, and we'll see you soon.